Sokobuki came into it, drag came into it. Jack Kerouac's On the Road came into it for some obscure reason. I remember seeing a film about high priests in Indonesia who were also in drag, and then found out that most high priests outside of the Judeo-Christian ethic adopt some kind of female attire, or sort of female, or at least androgynous kind of makeup, and that was almost traditionally part of other cultures' religions. And I found that fascinating. So in my mind, there was something of the high priest to the Ziggy character as well. I tried to cram in every bloody piece of information that I had at my fingertips at that particular time to create this little religious base for myself. Probably that's what it was about. I don't know. Or in other words, I haven't got a clue. It smacked of things like Hubert Selby, Jr., that had recently been the last exit from Brooklyn, which, and also John Retch's book, Cities of the Night, both books of which made a huge impact on me. And Lou's writing was right in that ballpark. It was, Dylan had certainly brought a new kind of intelligence to pop songwriting, but then Lou had taken it even further into the avant-garde and had its roots in Baudelaire and Rimbaud, and that side, that other thread of history, which isn't talked about very much, which it is now, of course. Now it is history, but at that time it was merely a thread. It wasn't considered important, in fact.
The melody generally comes pre, and the lyrics come as poems, and I join lyrics with different melodies. I tend to stockpile both.
Oh, I see.
And fit together where
and sometimes you find that lyrics that
it never
fit.
comes really as a whole thing.
It doesn't?
Not often.
In your plans for this tour,
yeah.
Can you tell us in what way it's changing, the stage act is changing?
Well, it'll be a longer show.
Oh, what? A longer show?
Yeah.
Than last time?
I guess at least an hour and a half.
Good.
Possibly 2 hours in some places.
Good.
We can do it.
You're adding some musicians to the band.
Mm-hmm.
You're expanding the band.
I'm not expanding the band so much as adding people to the show. The band have been and probably always will be the Spiders, Mick Ronson, Woody Woodmansey and Trevor Bolder. But we have now some backup musicians and singers that have joined us for the tour, being Mike Garson on piano, who's from New York, Bucks and Ken Fordham, who are sax players who come from England, and two singers, one Jess McCormack and the other one Hutch, who play guitar and congas and percussive instruments.
And Hutch and Jess are childhood friends, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I got tired of the sort of the lie of the rock performer is exactly the same on stage as he is off stage, which in most cases isn't true at all. But so I thought, well, take it a stage further and completely separate the personalities, the person behind it all who's writing it and creating it, and the one up front that does the interviews and does the shows, and so I created the characters and put them on stage, and then I would take them further and put them into interviews, and I would only do interviews as the character. I think there's a greater emphasis on violence being a part of the spirit that must be built in the Japanese culture. It's not as apparent in the Western. We just like to go and fight because we want to steal countries or steal something another country's got. But it's not quite that way in the East. It's part of being. Violence is, as much as lovemaking, is quite as important. It should be worked on as hard as lovemaking. It's quite odd. I'm not comfortable with it at all. He was out of his gourd, totally flipped. I mean, the guy was not playing with a full deck at all. And he used to carry maps of Europe around with him. And I remember very distinctly him opening a map out on Charing Cross Road outside the tube station and putting it on the pavement and kneeling down with a magnifying glass. And I got down there with him, and he was pointing out all the sites where UFOs were going to be landing over the next few months. And he had a firm conviction that there was a very strong connection between himself, aliens, and Jesus Christ. Those are the three elements that went into his makeup and drove him. He eventually went to France and became a huge rock star over there. And one night, he decided he'd had enough, so he came out on stage in white robes and said that the whole thing about rock had been a lie, that in fact he was Jesus Christ. And it was the end of Vince, his career, and everything else. And it was that and his story which really became one of the essential ingredients of Ziggy and his worldview. It was actually a house that was offered to me. It was a 400-year-old tie-dye house, but I wasn't able to take it at the time, but mainly because I couldn't find any land to build it on. It's very hard to find land in Japan. So, but I think I would love to do that, just to buy a very old, because of the Japanese carpentry, I think is quite superb, with only the use of wood, pegs, no metal. It would be nice to, before they're all destroyed, to try and get hold of one of those old houses and store it until I find somewhere to rebuild it. It was always very important to me, and it's always been something that I've had a real push-pull relationship all my life, is the idea of being trapped and pinned down and categorized. I always felt would be like prison to me if I wanted to move and change as a writer and a performer. That if I got put into a pocket, if I got said, oh, well, he's that, it would sort of really, it would rip my guts out as a writer, that it would, because my writing is based on the idea of transience. My writing is a very clear understanding that nothing in this world is a real reality. It's not something that you can hold on to. It can be something you can enjoy briefly, tentatively for the moment that it's there, love or a sunset or whatever, but like a sunset, and unfortunately in so many cases like love, it's a transitory thing. And I didn't want to get locked into being this one thing and not being able to flit like a butterfly from flower to flower, pollinating my intellect. Something like that. Had an awful lot to do with not wanting to be pinned down, not wanting to be like a pinned butterfly, or moth probably in my case. I think the difference that most artists have, the ones that I come across, we tend to think our opinions are a lot more important than other people's in some way. That often we feel as though we have the key to something. I don't think that we do at all. I just think we dwell on it more. We tend to look at the world as some usable substance more than a non-artist would. I think for many people, just getting through life is enough. That's a big enough task, let alone having to look at the world and the universe and say, now, if I had my way, you know. Last year or two, we've reacquainted with each other, and it's so nice at this time in our lives, I think, to kind of look back and see that we've both had considerable artistic successes since we both began. And it's nice to feel that you've contributed in a fairly major way to how your chosen art has progressed, because it's the way that one wanted it to do when you started off. You think, I know what I wanted to do, you know. And I think both of us feel that we did what we set out to do, which was change the course of the river a bit. Were you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll come to an end. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed myself today for filling in for possibly Ray. I don't know if it was Ray. And I hope to see you all once again another day in another place. So, till the same time, next time, This is David Bowie saying, oh. Bye-bye.